Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday night live. We are so glad to have you here tonight because this is a special night. We have a very special topic that we want to talk about, and that is the topic on the issue of grief, on grief. And so we're just inviting you and asking that if you have any friends, any relatives, or anyone who may be going through that struggle right now, that process, why don't you just send them a message, text them, fake text them or email them or give them a call and just tell them to hop online because tonight we're going to be talking about grieving, especially during this holiday season. Because here's the things, some of you, well, I'm not going to say some, many of us are wondering how to get through this holiday season without our loved ones. And so we have invited a special guest. She is one of First Christian's very own, and she is none other than Miss Monique Makel. We've invited her to join us tonight to offer strategies that can offer support and helping some of us to navigate through this difficult season. Now, let me just tell you about Monique. Monique is a licensed master social worker. She's a certified grief informed professional. And currently, Monique is the school-based therapist in Howard County Public Schools, as well as she works with the mobile crisis team as a mobile crisis team clinician. But in addition to her stellar credentials, in addition to all of her degrees that she has acquired, her studying that she has done, Monique knows what it's like to go through this grieving process firsthand. And I tell you, most of the time, personal experience will trump, if you will, book knowledge. And so I welcome to the stage today none other than First Christian owns Monique Makel. So why don't you just send up some hearts right now as you welcome Monique onto the stage. I know she is there, so we may be just moving a little slow as we're coming on board. But again, Monique has gone through her own personal challenges. And as I shared before, it's great to have book knowledge and all the education, but when you walk that walk and walk through it yourself, then that's a whole other thing. Monique, welcome.
Hi, thank you for
I
having
thought you
me.
had disappeared almost like, okay, where is she?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
I know it wasn't you.
Yeah.
But it can go like that. Monique, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
yeah, we really appreciate it. And for some of our viewers who may not know, Monique had offered seminars at the church for those who are dealing with grief. And so we're just happy to have her here with us, so we can just talk and and have her to offer some tools, if you will, on how to navigate through this season that can be very, very difficult, when we have lost a loved one. So, just to start off, Monique,
Mhm.
let's just talk about grief. We know there are different types of grief. We can grieve the
Yes.
loss of a job. We can it's not always dealing with losing a person. But for
Hmm.
tonight, we mainly want to focus on, when we have lost a loved one and who has transitioned on. So, share with us, if you will, um, some of the signs that a person may be grieving. I know when we think of grief, we often think of a person maybe crying, feeling depressed, but are there other signs that can indicate that a person is grieving?
Absolutely. In fact, most of the times, if somebody's grieving, you're not going to see them crying. And I wanted to just make a quick distinction between grief and mourning, because
Okay.
a lot of times they're used interchangeably.
Yeah.
But grieving is that internal. So those are all the feelings that you feel inside, that sadness, that anger, melancholy, whatever. Mourning is outward. So, when we go to funerals and we wear black, that's
Mhm.
mourning. Anytime we go to visit a grave site and place flowers, that's an act of mourning. So I
Okay.
just wanted to make that, excuse me, distinction really quickly, the difference between grief and mourning. But a lot of times, people feel grief in their bodies, and that can be muscle weakness, tension, not being able to sleep, being exhausted. I don't know, having to push through that tiredness, and even just hypersensitivity to sounds and lights and touches. All of that physical reactions of grief. And then you have kind of your mental and cognitive reactions, short-term memory loss, confusion, can't
Mhm.
concentrate, hard to make decisions. That was a big one for me, just being hard to make a decision. Suicidal thoughts,
Mhm.
thoughts of self-harm, all of that is grieving. Emotional, that numbness, hopelessness, fear, bitterness, feeling just everything's out of control. And even spiritual, being disconnected from God,
Mhm.
um, questioning your faith a lot. So all of those are common grief reactions. Being sick for a long time because your body can't fight off, the stress,
Yeah.
headaches, just anything. It is so much more than just I'm crying and I'm sad.
So for a person to maybe help identify that what they're experiencing is grief, I mean, you've given us some of those signs and symptoms.
Mhm.
What should a person do to help to identify exactly, is this grief or is this something else?
So I think the main thing is kind of knowing who you are. So if you're the type where you never get headaches and then all of a sudden, you experience this loss and then maybe 6 months down the line, you start getting really bad headaches. You might want to check in with yourself.
Mhm.
How are you sleeping? Do you usually get up all night, all through the night? If you do, okay, that might not be a grief response. But if
Okay.
you tend to be a sound sleeper and then all of a sudden you wake at every single thing. So it takes kind of being in tune with who you are as a person and what you tend to experience. But also, when we're grieving, we need to be diligent about going to the doctors, and our regular just kind of check-ins, because you could very well have a physical, problem that you don't go to the doctors to get checked out. But it's kind of just, you have to take inventory. So who am I? What do I usually do? Am I a happy-go-lucky type? And then now all of a sudden I'm dragging and I don't want to leave the house and I'm isolating. All of
Yeah.
those are different. So look for things that are different than your baseline.
Okay. That's a good point because just speaking from personal experience, when your point of just making sure you're checking in with yourself and keeping up with your doctor's appointment. One of the issues that I had, it's like my annual couple of my annual exams, I had completely forgotten all about them.
Hmm.
And when I did check back in,
Right.
that all the time I didn't realize like 2 years had passed
Hmm.
before, and it's like you totally miss. I can just say
It's
for
like because
myself.
you're in a time warp. It's like life is moving around you, but you are so focused on survival. So you're not thinking about, oh, I need to go get my eyes checked, or, man, I haven't had my mammogram. You're not thinking about those
Right.
things because you are literally trying to save all of your energy to survive.
Mhm.
But it's important. Little stuff, drinking water and getting rest. Like those are things that are so easy to forget, but make a huge difference when you're grieving.
So it sounds like from what you're sharing too, that it's really important that you have support around you, that there are others around you who might can pick up on some things that you're missing.
Absolutely. And I'll share. So after my mom passed, which is how I got into this whole grief thing. Because everybody who knows me knows that 2017 was the worst year of my life to date.
Yeah.
Losing my mom, and then a few months later losing my daughter's father unexpectedly. And we'll toss in some other losses that were not death related. So worst year, worst whatever of my life.
Yeah.
And so I coped by eating chips. That was how I coped. I lived in Millersville at the time, and it was a Dollar General right down the street, and I would stop on my way home from work and grab my chips. And so I just checked out. That's what I did. All the energy I had was to take care of my child, was to go to work, and then by the end of the day, when I came home, I could just sit in one corner of the couch and eat my chips. And it wasn't until somebody said to me, it was like, I know you're going through a tough time, but I've noticed you're picking up a little bit of weight. And I'm kind of concerned because I packed on the weight quickly. I gained 100 pounds in that year, just being completely transparent,
Yeah.
because I could not do anything else but eat. I didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want to think about anything. And food brought me comfort.
Mhm.
And so they mentioned it, and I was thinking to myself, okay, well, whatever. My mother just died. Like, go away. But I had to think about it, and I'm like, okay, they're saying that from a place of love, and I didn't realize that. And they shared, like, I'm afraid that you're going to die as well, sooner than you probably would want to if you don't get help. And it was
Mm-hmm.
then that I decided to go to do therapy,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to die. I became preoccupied with the thought of death because my mother was my last living parent. So then you enter into a new kind of identity of, now I'm a
Right.
parentless person. I'm a parentless adult. I have no parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to think about it, and I'm like, wow, I don't want to check out soon. So maybe I should go and get help. So you need people around you who are going to lovingly kind of pull you back when they've noticed you've gone a little too far. And I say lovingly, because just having people around and say, girl, get it together, boy, what are you tripping for? Like, that's not the kind of support you need. You need somebody who's going to acknowledge what you've gone through, and also say, but we can deal with this in a healthier way.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about what people shouldn't say and what people
Yes.
shouldn't do.
Let me tell you, I absolutely hate, but it was in God's plan. They're
Oh
in
my
a better
gosh,
place.
girl. Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That's the quickest way for me to just not even want to talk to you no more. Like,
Yeah.
just don't say
That
anything.
that line, and well, they're in a better place.
Right. I don't
That
want to
just
hear that.
that sets me off in a whole nother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're in a better place. Okay, I'm sure, but I wish they were in this place.
Exactly.
I do.
Exactly.
I wish that they were still here. I know, like, two things can be true. I know they're in a better place, and
Yeah.
I still wish that they were here. I'm not
Yeah.
diminishing that they've gone on to glory and got all their crowns in heaven, but that's not what I want to hear. That's not helping me. You think
Right.
it is, but it's not. So try, if you're supporting someone who is grieving, stay away from the cliches.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you can kind of read on a Hallmark card. It was all in the plan, and things will get better. No, no, no. Stay away from that. I
Yeah.
think the important thing that people just want to feel seen
Mm-hmm.
when they have a loss,
Mm-hmm.
because somebody dies, and as a society, we have the standard what we do. Somebody dies, we meet up at the house. People are bringing
Right.
cakes and pies and chicken boxes, and then we have the funeral and we have the repast, and then that very next day, everybody else is going on their way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what happens. So for what people should, like, say and do is be present.
Mm-hmm.
Supporting a grieving person is uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
because it's unpredictable. You don't know if they're going to
Right.
start crying. You don't know if they're going to
Right.
want to tell a story and laugh. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we dismiss how important it is to just come and
Just
sit with them in their sorrow.
yeah.
Just come and sit. You don't have to say anything. If you don't know
Yeah.
what to say, don't say anything. Just sit.
Right.
um tell stories, name names, oh man, Miss Vanessa was, I remember this one time she did this, or I remember when Uncle Billy did this. Like, tell the stories, because your loved ones, your person that is grieving, they want others to remember the person that they lost. And
Right.
by tiptoeing around it because you don't want to make them sad because it's making you uncomfortable, you're really doing more damage than good.
Mm-hmm.
So just stay away from the cliches and be honest. This is awful and I don't know what to say, but I'm here with you in it.
Right. Right. It's practicing what we call the ministry of presence, and
Absolutely.
and just being there with the person, and just going through that whole
Yep.
process. And the other thing too, sometimes I don't. Fortunately, I don't hear it as much now as it used to
Hmm.
be. But when you hear where people kind of question your faith because you're
Right.
grieving, like, don't you believe, in God? Yeah, I believe in God, but at the same time, faith and grief can go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
God does not diminish because I'm grieving.
Right.
Because I have faith, I can grieve, you know,
Exactly. Yep.
and knowing He has me. But yeah, it's really important that, when you have that safety net and have those
Hmm.
support people around you, and they do have to be careful. And the
Hmm.
other thing, yes, if we can just talk a little bit more, just even about the process of grief, and that is, just using for example, when my husband passed, I still had my wedding ring on.
Hmm.
So I know technically that once your spouse is gone, you are quote unquote not married anymore, but it doesn't turn off like that. And
Right.
so I was still wearing my wedding ring. And I had this one lady come up to me and she said, "When are you going to take that ring off?"
Mm.
And I'm like, first of all, you
Right.
know, it's
Ready,
really not
ready to say some
your,
things to you. Right.
right. It's not your business when I'm going to take this ring off. If I choose never to take it off, you know.
Absolutely. That's your
But
business.
I think if you could just talk more about respecting the process, and that because there are people and who
Hmm.
feel, oh man, I should be over this by now, or I should be further along in the process now. It's 2 years and I still have these moments. Will you
Hmm.
talk a bit about that for us, please?
Yes. So when it comes to grieving, you kind of think about it like horses in a race and they have the blinders on. So they're not looking at the person next to them. That's how you have to look at your own grief journey. Like
Hmm.
the way that I grieve and deal with, my loss is not going to be the way that you deal with yours. So that's first and foremost. There is no, so I say this carefully because I say there's no wrong way to grieve because it's not, but there are unhealthy ways to cope.
Unhealthy ways.
So we'll put that. But everybody's grief is different, and you cannot put a timeline on it. However, if you want to get clinical, normal grieving periods are from about 6 months to 2 years.
Hmm.
So if you feel like you're the type where you want to give yourself a timeline, you could say 2 years. Okay, feelings, the emotions should begin to become more bearable at that point. So if
Hmm.
you just buried your aunt and she was super close to you 3 weeks ago, just stop.
Yeah.
Like it should still be so very painful.
Yeah.
Even if you are able to get up and go to work and do all the things that you're supposed to do, it is going to hurt.
Hmm.
I like to think about this analogy whenever I'm doing a grief presentation. I always talk about the ball in the box. And so, when we're grieving, our grief is a ball and there's a pain button inside this box. And so when you first have this loss, that ball is huge and you cannot move without it hitting that pain button. Like
Right.
it's gonna happen. Over time, the goal that if you are healing in a healthy way is that eventually that ball will get smaller. So the
Hmm.
pain doesn't go away. It's just that that ball is smaller and will not hit that pain button as much. You
That's
are
good.
still always going to grieve. I one of them shows, I don't even remember which one, but grief is the price of love.
Okay.
You love the
Yes.
person. So you
Yes.
are going to always grieve them. You are always going to miss their presence, but it should not be 20 years and it still feels exactly the same way as it did yesterday. So
Hmm.
I know sometimes I'll see on social media, especially when anniversaries or holidays come around, people will say, but it feels like it was just yesterday.
Hmm.
Maybe logically, because you can't imagine that amount of time has passed. But if you
Right.
are still having that same visceral reaction in your gut, just as if literally it was yesterday, then it might be time to really seek some help
Right. Right.
because it shouldn't still be that way. So that's not saying that it's not going to hurt, but it should not still feel so raw
Right.
decades later.
Right. Right. Then
So,
something hasn't happened. The necessary
right,
work hasn't taken place.
right.
Talk to us about unhealthy grieving.
Okay.
What's unhealthy?
So when it comes to coping, coping is anything that we do intentionally to deal with a feeling or, an emotion. So the unhealthy coping are those things that they feel good in the moment. It's helping you to forget about what's going on, but it's not really helping your situation. And in fact, it's probably making things worse.
Hmm.
So, the overeating and the withdrawing, sex, drugs, alcohol, rock and roll, all that. Like those are all those things
Yeah.
that they feel good right now. And I'm
Yeah.
disassociating from whatever I have going on, but it's not helping the situation. You're not really processing, you're not feeling, you're not doing anything. Those are all unhealthy.
Yeah. I know for me, it was shopping.
Yep.
Girl, I stayed in the stores. Every weekend. I already knew where I was going to be, and it was crazy. And I'm going to tell you, it was like it was only one thing that snapped me out of it, and I was over at TJ Maxx coming out with bags, honey. It was. it was it was like this one thing I had that made me happy in the moment,
Mhm.
And so I'm coming out with these bags, and Ricky at that time he was in school. He was at University of Maryland, and because he was in school, I had set our accounts up so if he needed books or need anything, he could easily
Right.
put money over for him. But he could also see the account as well. So he calls me. I am walking out of I'm walking out of
With the
TJ,
evidence.
right? So he calls me and he says, "Mom, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Um, Mom, have you seen the account? Yeah, what about the account? You might want to look at the account, Mom. Is Don't you have mortgage to pay? Monique, when he said that, it was like I was slapped back
Like a
into
light
reality.
went off. Yep.
Yeah. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God.
Yep.
Because I hadn't paid any attention to the account. I was just
Swiping.
spending,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know,
Feeling
and
good,
then
feeling great.
yeah, I was gone. And then he said, do you need to talk? Do we need I can laugh about it now, but I that was my thing. I went to
Yep.
that, and I will tell anyone I've had folks who've lost loved ones, especially spouse, and my thing
Mhm.
has always been do not make any major
Oh,
decisions
absolutely not.
in that first year. Don't buy anything major. Stay clear of that because I thought I was clear.
Right.
I thought I was
Mhm.
thinking clear, only to look back a year later was like, girl.
Yep. That's why I hate, like, as a soapbox, I hate that people get inheritance and like insurance checks like right after, the
Good.
loss. It is not good to have those raw feelings and probably more money than you've seen at one time in a minute. And I say that from experience.
Because you're
So,
not realizing that you are medicating the pain.
yep,
And you're using it to medicate. And it
yep,
feels good in the
absolutely.
moment. And girl, I did some damage. It was like,
Yep,
good Lord,
yep.
but look back on it. But yeah, that was just talking about those unhealthy
Hmm.
ways that we sometimes grieve and what we're going through. So as we're talking about, some of, the coping skills, I'm
Hmm.
realizing grieving. I know Christmas is coming. Um, what are this again? You did touch on some of the signs to look for. So I'm going to use myself for example again. My father died on Thanksgiving Day back in
Hmm.
1988. And I didn't realize, or I didn't make the connection at first. I would start feeling really funky like around
Right.
September.
Hmm.
He died in November. And I didn't make the connection that how I was feeling, starting to feel in September, and it would be that's kind of moody, just didn't want to be, just
Right.
irritated. Um, thought I was okay about the season, but just it was for me, it was just this feeling of just blah like,
Hmm.
and didn't come out of it until after the new year.
Yeah.
So can you talk to us a little bit more about, what you have already let about recognizing some of those signs, and then what do we do to
Hmm.
kind of check
Get
ourselves
through it.
and get through it?
So I think awareness is always the first point. You can't, fix anything that you aren't aware of.
Right.
So knowing that it's the holidays, know that it's gonna be hard. A lot of times we try to ignore it and think, oh, it's gonna be fine. Holidays and anniversaries. Be aware, know that they are coming, and kind of make a plan. So, what is my plan for the holidays? Do I want to go around my family? Do I not want to go around my family? I might get to that a little bit later. So, self-care, we hear about it, we talk about it, but it is more than just bubble baths and days at the spa.
Mhm.
Self-care is the only way that you are going to get through your grieving, but you have to figure out what kind of self-care is it that you need.
Okay.
Is it physical? Do I need to do more exercise? Am I feeling sluggish in my body because I'm not getting rest? So do I need to unplug my phone and go to bed earlier? You know, do I need to drink more water or go walking? When was the last time I took a shower? Because I'm not gonna
Mhm.
lie, it was some days where I did not have it in me to shower, and that's not like me. But it
Yeah.
is what it is, you know. So doing those kinds of things to take care of yourself. You know, mental. Are you struggling with your concentration? Okay,
Mhm.
so do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to maybe read more books? Like, what is it that you need? So you kind of have to take again inventory of yourself. Am I struggling spiritually? So do I need to seek spiritual counseling? You know,
Mhm.
when was the last time I read my word? Do I need to practice gratitude? Like, what is it that you need? Are you feeling overextended? Okay, practice your no. You know, self-preservation, spending time, balancing that alone time with friends, new hobbies. Like, there's so much. So it's anything that you do intentionally that's kind of filling your cup, that's bringing you that peace, that's bringing you refreshing. But there are different areas of it. So again, only you know what you need, because maybe
Right.
somebody needs a nap, maybe you need to go to the doctors.
Okay. How do you know when to push yourself? Because, sometimes when you're grieving, you
Hmm.
just don't have the energy. You just
Hmm.
have enough energy to get through the day. And when you get to the evening, that's success for you.
Absolutely. Yep.
So when do I say to myself, okay, I need to push through my feelings.
Hmm.
I know I need to walk. I should. I don't
Right.
feel.
So the motivation is never going to be there. If anybody had the chance, you know, the choice, you would probably lay in bed and watch TV over taking a walk.
Yeah.
It takes discipline. So making that decision to say, I don't want to feel like this the forever. So what can I do today in this moment to try to feel better? So maybe
Mhm,
you can't go and take a 30-minute walk,
mhm.
but can you walk 3 minutes to the mailbox and back? You know what I mean? So just trying
Right.
to start small, and giving yourself kind of that grace to not be perfect as soon as
Mhm,
you start out. But I would say try to push a little bit every day,
mhm, mhm,
whatever that looks like for you. Try to push every day. And
mhm,
again, knowing yourself. So if it's an anniversary and maybe it's the first anniversary, maybe that's not the time to push, you
mhm,
know, because you know that it's a overly emotional time. Maybe it's the first Thanksgiving without, you know, your mom who used to do all the cooking.
mhm,
It's okay to not push through that. But, you know, a random Tuesday in June and you're just laying on the couch and you feel like, oh, I should be doing something. Well, what can you do today
mhm.
that your future self will thank you for? So I
Right.
always just tell people, just try to push anyway.
Mhm,
It doesn't have to be big. Like you say, it could be small. Take a
mhm.
shower, vacuum your floor.
Yeah.
It's little things, but it makes a difference.
Yeah.
When was the
And
last time you changed your sheets? You know,
yeah,
like,
yeah. And chalk it up as a win.
yep,
You know?
absolutely. You know, we
Yeah.
small step, a baby step is still a step. You
Mhm.
know, so I
It's
try,
trying
you
to
know, try to take just out of your vocabulary. Like, you know, oh, what did you do today? Well, I just went to the store. You didn't just go to the store. You had to wake up. You had to put on clothes. You had to walk downstairs. You had to grab your keys. You had to drive to the store. That is a lot. So you didn't just go to the store. So
mhm,
celebrate your wins. You know,
mhm.
celebrate your successes.
So you mentioned something a little earlier, and you said, "Let's get back to it." So let's get back to it. Let's
Okay.
talk about when you're grieving within a family,
Hmm.
family grief. And 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 you may grieve differently.
Yes.
Uh, how do we navigate that?
Be prepared to make people mad.
Okay.
It is your way of grieving is your own, because even though we all may have lost the same person, that relationship is different. Um, Somebody might find comfort in a big family setting. That's where they may find their peace. Somebody else might find their peace in being alone.
Mhm,
Be okay with saying, I love you guys, but
mhm,
this year I don't have it.
mhm,
I will say the first year after my mom died, I think my family was getting together for Christmas. And my plan was to go to Christmas dinner. You know, that's what we do. It's family, be around family. And I woke up that day and I said, you know what? I don't have it. So I got my daughter dressed and I sent her somewhere else and I laid on my couch and I watched TV because that is what I wanted to do for that Christmas. And if I recall, I think I got a couple calls like, wait, you're not coming to dinner? I'm not. I'll see you guys next time. You know what I mean? People are going to be upset. People don't like boundaries, but that's their business, not yours. You know, so you do what it is that you feel like you need to do to survive that day. And be okay, like I said, with making people mad. You are not here to please anybody. You are here to get through this. And whatever that looks like for you, it is what it is. That's just my thought. Like you do you, regardless of what your family may or may not think or what they may or may not want. And you can do it with love and compassion and grace. Not saying to be, you know, a jerk about it, but you know, I am honoring myself and what I feel like I can do. And today I don't have it.
Right. Let's talk a little bit more. Like you brought up about Eden, you know, having her father passing and so forth. And but let's talk about children and grieving and how do we help them, especially we're grieving.
Right.
Child is grieving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got to do what we got to do to keep kids alive. You know what I mean? Got to take care of kids.
Yeah.
But can we get into that? It possibly, hopefully, can help someone who may be online who, you know, they're single parent, they're going through, but the children are going through too, and how the children will sometimes respond during the midst of grief.
Being a grieving parent, especially a grieving single parent, I can't speak to any other situation because I'm only a grieving single parent. It is a level of hard that one cannot comprehend unless you have lived there. My recommendation is, again, give yourself some grace. Cereal is still food. You know, you don't have to make a gourmet meal every single night. You do what you can. In terms of emotionally, kids know a lot more than we give them credit for. And so we might think that, you know, we're hiding how sad we are because we want things to be the same for them. But you have to recognize their world is not the same anymore.
Right.
You know, so you ignoring that, you're teaching them that this is how you grieve. You ignore what's going on. You just try to push through. Talk to your kids. Mommy sad today. You know, well, why mommy sad? Mommy misses grandma. You know what I mean? And you can have that conversation. You don't want to cry? You should. Because you need to show your children that it is okay to cry. That being able to cry and work through these uncomfortable feelings, that is a strength. And your children need to know that. So again, just talk to them in an age appropriate way, of course. You know what your child knows. Try to keep their routine the same as much as you can. So, you know, bedtime, you guys were doing bedtime stories every night. Still try to do that bedtime story because the main thing kids are, they're concerned. Like, okay, so this person died. So now is my mom going to die? Is my dad going to die? Like my primary caregiver, you know, they're concerned. So assure them, you know, we don't know when people are going to die, but I'm going to do my best to make sure that you are cared for and loved even when I'm not here. Talk about what that plan looks like. Like my daughter, she's made it clear where she wants to go when I die, if she's a minor. And I expect that we have these conversations because they need to be prepared to live without you, if that makes sense.
What are some of the signs of your child grieving? You know, what should we look for in a child who could be grieving and we may be missing it, or would be grieving because they lost a parent or a grandparent? Yeah,
acting out. That's the biggest one. Your usually well-behaved child is now getting phone calls home from school. Yep, because they got some big feelings and don't know what to do with them. You know what I mean? Likewise, if your child becomes extra needy, you know, they're really, really don't want to let you out of their sight. They're super just anxious about everything. That's kind of a red flag. Bedwetting, like those types of things, the sign of stress. So they could very well do that. Isolating and kind of retreating into themselves. Those are all signs. Again, avoidance. Everything's fine. I'm fine. Everything's great. I'm great. When clearly you can see that something's not right. Because a lot of times kids get so protective. It's like, well, I don't want to talk about how sad I am because I don't want to make mommy sad. So again, that goes in. That's a big one. Yes. And when my dad died when I was 11, I did the same thing because I'm like, well, I
Yeah.
know that my mom is stressed and she's
Yeah.
sad, and I don't want to do anything that's going to add to that. I don't want to be a burden. So assuring them, I am here for you. This is a safe space. I don't care if you're upset. I'm not going to get upset. I want to be here to support you. You have to just affirm your children and let them know that it is okay to feel and express whatever they're feeling. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't know, get them help. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, therapy is not a bad thing. There are people who are trained to help your children tap into their feelings if you can't, or
Mm-hmm.
if they decide that they don't want to talk to you. That's realistic too.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids don't want to share with their parents, and that's okay. The main thing is making sure that they have that outlet.
Mm-hmm. And don't be telling kids, oh, now you the man of the house, or
Please don't.
yeah, or just telling
No,
kids you need to be strong for mommy, or you need to be strong
no,
for daddy, and it's
don't
you
do
don't need.
that.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
kids take so much of that in,
they
and
do.
mm,
And their
and it,
job is to still just be a kid, and even letting them know that. Your
mm-hmm,
job is to not make me feel better. Your job is to not do anything but go to school, get good grades, clean your room, whatever your house rules are. Like, that's your job. And
people
reinforcing that,
say,
you know?
people can say, oh God, especially Christians. We can say some stuff sometimes to people and to kids, and it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You just realize what you just understand. When my husband passed, someone had the nerve to say to Ricky, who was 18,
Mm-hmm.
18. So are you going to now pastor the church, or what are you going to do to help take care of your family? You're 18.
Right.
You got this. He's a kid. You got him thinking
Yep.
that this is something he's supposed to do. And it's like, no, your
Yeah.
job is to stay in college, do
Yep.
what you need to, and enjoy your college life.
Live your life. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we do have to be careful what we say to our children,
Mm-hmm.
and put these unreasonable expectations on them, and
Absolutely.
recognizing that they're going through, that grieving process as well. So yeah, we talked about how to deal with family and friends, and of course, on your other challenges is when you're trying to hold down a job
Mm-hmm.
and you're grieving,
Yes.
trying to work it out. I'm assuming you would advise maybe trying to have some kind of conversation with your employer if you're working for.
Absolutely. If you are working for somebody, absolutely. Hey, you all, this is, you don't even have to go into, detail, but this is what has happened to me. If my performance slips, this is why, so that they know. So it's not just that I'm slacking off, but putting systems kind of into place so that you can still do your job to the best of your ability. So if
Mhm.
you are struggling with kind of remembering things, maybe you need to start writing things down. If, maybe you weren't the to-do list type of person before, but maybe now you need to be the to-do list type of person, so that
Mhm.
you can keep track of what's going on. One thing that I also kind of advocate for is like worry time. So schedule your time to worry or be
Fine.
sad or whatever. So like, you might be working and you're, having a, you're working. That was me typing. So you're working and, all of a sudden you get hit because you never know when it's going to come.
That's right.
Maybe you need to go to the bathroom for a moment. Tell yourself, okay, I'm going to feel this for 5 minutes. I'm going to
Mhm.
go ahead and just let myself have it for 5 minutes. It sounds weird and it sounds like
Mhm.
people don't really do that. They do because I've done it. So people do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to feel this for 5 minutes. I'm going to cry. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to do whatever it is that I need to do to pull myself together. And I'm going to come back to this when I go home tonight. And
Mhm.
that's what you do. So that way you can focus on where you are because you only have but so many units of energy. And so you cannot use your all your energy on your morning right now because you have to do your job. That's just
Mhm.
unfortunately the sad reality that we're in, is that if you even get any time off from work, it might be 3 days and they're
Right.
expecting you to come back to work and be fully functioning. It's not. If you come back to work and you don't have conversation for people, sit at your desk and be quiet and do your work, and that's fine. And if anybody takes it personally, again, that's their problem, not yours. We cannot internalize other people's reactions and other people's thoughts you are truly surviving, especially that first year, maybe even 2 years. You are surviving. You cannot waste your time and energy thinking about, well, I used to always go out with my coworkers at lunch, and now if I don't go, they're going to think this. Sorry, y'all, I don't have it today. Maybe one day, I will sit with you guys, but maybe today's not that day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Trying to get that energy to go through it and to make it. And that's another thing, with having to work outside the home or working for someone, the leave time is really insufficient, especially I would say for those of us who are people of color, because of how we tend to mourn and how we do celebrate life. 3 days does not work for us.
The body probably not even in the ground after 3 days, to be for real.
No, we need a minimum of 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Minimum 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, it's still not a good thing, but you got to go back. But
you got to go back to work.
Your head not there. It's just not there. But it's just takes so much out of people and trying to work around all of that. So it's just that whole process of
and I will say, not to cut you off, but while I'm still thinking about it, see if your employer offers an EAP program. So that's like employee assistance programs, where sometimes they can do the short-term counseling. Sometimes you could get 6, maybe 8 sessions. That might be enough just to get you, over the hump, knowing that you have somebody that you're going to talk to every week, where you can just kind of dump and cry and whatever, for an hour. And sometimes your employer includes that. So check into like your HR or whatever and see if you all have an EAP program.
That's good. That's good. And for, it's definitely for anyone who's online, it's okay to get help.
Please do.
It's okay to get help to go through that grieving process. Even if it's a friend that you have, a good friend who understands, like we talked earlier about just being present, who you can just talk and be you. Because as you shared, we go through so many emotions. You could be up one day, down all the same day.
Oh, absolutely.
So many. I'm same day. You can do it in a couple of hours, up, down, all over the place. But having someone in your space that will help you to that you can talk to and just be you, be yourself. If you feel like yelling, yell. If you don't, it's important to have that kind of excuse my co-host back there. So we do want to invite anyone who's online. We have quite a few people who are on here and if you have any questions that you would like to ask Monique, please feel free to just put it in the chat, and she'll be more than happy to address that for you as we're moving along and just dealing with this whole grieving process. So you facilitated a grief seminar.
Yes.
Tell us about what that seminar is like. What is it that you cover? How does that work? And when do you have plans of doing it again?
So my grief seminars, I like to come from like a psychoeducational piece. So especially for people of color, for us, most of us don't grieve in a healthy way. We don't know how. So I like to educate people on what exactly is grief. What is mourning? What is bereavement? Because bereavement is that period of mourning. Like, words mean things, So I like to educate people on that. We talk about the different types of grief, because people always say, okay, I'm grieving. But what kind of grief are you experiencing? Is it normal grief, which is the textbook, someone died, this is what I'm experiencing? Is it, kind of an anticipatory grief where I have a loved one who is in a nursing, facility or, long-term care, and they, are anticipated to pass away. So I'm mourning, I'm grieving and mourning them, and they're still here, a disenfranchised grief where people are kind of like, well, why are you even grieving? You didn't even know that person. Like, so there are multiple different types of grief. And I like to bring attention to those to normalize the grief experience, because not only do we all grieve differently, we all experience different types of grief. Sometimes I'll add in about the COVID, because there's collective grief. We
Yes.
all experience collective grief. I can guarantee everybody knows where they were when like Michael Jackson died. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
when you're grieving as a community, when we see the police brutality and January 6th, we're watching all that stuff on TV. There is a strong sense of community mourning, and even with, like I said, COVID-19, we all lost so much. So
Mhm.
I bring attention, to that. I break down the different types of self-care. So really giving finite examples of this is what spiritual self-care looks like. This is what physical self-care looks like. We talk about the different reactions in your body. I have illustrations. I talk about the importance of therapy and what that did for me, the importance of verbalizing how you're feeling. And that was one thing that I wanted to say, just to go all the way back about not to say to people, don't ask people, how are you doing? They're not doing well. Okay, I can promise you they're not doing well. Asking somebody, how are you feeling today?
Mhm.
And if you don't know, Google it. I love a good feelings chart. If I was, I would share my screen and have you all point out a feeling. So, using feelings words. But anyway, if it's around the holidays, we'll talk about practical things you can do at the holidays, making your escape plan. If you have a car, you might want to drive yourself separately from your family. So when you're ready to go, you can
Mhm.
go. So we talk about those things, different ways you can memorialize people. Depending on the audience, I've done things for caregivers. So I might talk about specifically some of the concerns that caregivers may have. So it just depends. Um, so that's usually what my seminars look like. They are educational because
Right.
you are here to learn. It's not therapy, so we're not really here to, process our feelings. You may share something, but in that space, I cannot be your therapist.
Right.
But I'm going to just tell you what some normal things might be that you're experiencing. My hope is to do it again.
Mhm.
I love doing them. I love teaching people. I think it's very important. I just am doing a little bit too much in my life right now, to be
Well,
brutally
yeah,
honest. Yeah.
you got a lot going on by being on call and all of that. So I can see
Yes.
it's very, very challenging. We do have a question that came up. It said, "What are some ways that you can support someone experiencing grief?" I'm assuming it's saying a friend, family member, or spouse. So each one of those relationships will be different as far as how the grief.
And what you can do. Yeah. Just keeping in mind that the love language of the grieving is acts of service. So a lot of times we'll say, someone will experience a loss and we'll say, let me know if you need anything. Don't do that either.
Mhm.
Because 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna let you know. Because
Right.
A, they might not know what they need.
Mhm.
And B, again, you don't want to feel like a burden to somebody. So don't ask, just offer. So if I
Mhm.
know that you have multiple children, hey, I'm going to come pick the kids up this weekend so you can have some time to yourself. Oh, I'm stopping at the grocery store for dinner. What would you like? Oh, I've been to your house and I can see you struggling a little bit. I'm going to send a cleaner.
Mhm.
So doing things that are going to alleviate some of the stress and some of the decision making that they have to do is helpful. Again, being present, just be
Mhm.
there, even
Mhm.
if you don't know what to say, even when it's uncomfortable. Because, like I said, people don't like to see others experience emotion around them. So, you
Right.
try to pat their back and woo, woo, woo it away really quickly. No, you sit in your discomfort for their benefit,
Yeah.
and whatever you have to do to process after you're gone, do that. But don't put that on the person that's grieving. If they're there and they need to cry, you sit there and you give them a tissue.
That was good what you just said, to sit in your discomfort, be uncomfortable for them, because that's
Mm-hmm.
why we tend to say things that don't make sense, because we
Yeah.
don't know what to say and feel like we need to have something to say. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right, when a person is grieving, it can be uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
to honor them and your relationship is to sit in. That was
Absolutely.
good. To sit in
Yep.
that. That's good. Another question is do you think in-person therapy is better than virtual therapy?
So I do both as a therapist. I have virtual clients and I also have in person clients.
Hmm.
Each has its own benefits. You have to know yourself. So if you are the type where you get distracted, or you kind of zone out, maybe in person might be better for you because you are sitting next to somebody and you are in a space where there's little distractions. If you know you have a busy life and you're probably not going to be able to go sit in front of somebody, but you know you want help, do virtual.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that one is better than the other. They are each different and they each serve different purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in both because I get paid by both. So
Yeah, I know that's right. Um, you were sharing, as far as walking through the grieving process in your seminar.
Mhm.
And one thing that you were saying is what we collectively have grieved.
Mhm.
And so we went through during the pandemic, you
Right.
had George Floyd, you
Mhm.
had so many deaths by, unnecessary deaths by police
Yes.
officers. We had to deal with January 6th and all of that trauma. So
Mhm.
when you take all of that trauma, because I think many of us don't even realize that we've just
That
been
is trauma.
traumatized.
Yep.
Yeah.
Over and
It-
over, repeatedly.
Repeatedly, the pandemic, and if I could
Yep.
take it back even further, some of us just traumatized from, 2016 with the election
Yeah.
and what we had to deal with
Absolutely.
and
Yep.
all of that. So when you compile that, have that, and then you lose a loved one on
Mhm.
top of that, I know the digging out has to be more challenging
Yes.
and to get up out of all of
Yeah.
those levels.
Because sometimes it's hard. It's like, what am I even grieving? Like, who am I grieving in this moment? What am I? It's a lot. And it is a jumbled, tangled mess. And I don't even have like good. Well, this is what you can do. Sometimes, you might be grieving your husband today, and tomorrow you might be grieving George Floyd. Like, it just, as it
Mhm,
comes, you deal with the feeling and you process it the way you would with anything. But
mhm.
because it is trauma, because it is, cumulative grief, know that it's probably going to take a bit longer to work through than just if you had maybe one or two losses. So,
Right.
more so just having that mindset of knowing it's going to take time before things get better.
What I'm hearing from you with a lot that you shared, it seemed like one running theme is be gentle with yourself.
Absolutely. I should get that on a t-shirt because I say
Just,
that multiple times a day.
just be gentle with yourself.
It is hard
Mhm,
to lose people that you love. It will wreck your entire life. Everything that you thought you knew, thought you believed, it's different. You will always now be operating in a before the loss and an after the loss.
mhm.
Like you will never be the way that you were before. A lot
That's
of times we're grieving and people are like, well, I just want things to go back to normal. There
not
is
going to
no
happen.
more normal.
Yeah.
You
It's a
now
whole
are
new.
exactly, you are responsible for creating your new normal. It's never
Mhm,
going to go back the way it was, and the longer you keep yearning for that, you're just delaying accepting your new reality. And that is
mhm,
the ultimate goal of healthy grieving, is accepting your loss and
mhm,
being able to integrate that into your new life.
mhm,
That is the goal, but that
mhm.
is only done with patience, kindness, and gentleness with yourself. Should the word should not be in your vocabulary.
Yeah.
I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I shouldn't be this, I shouldn't feel that way. That's a bad word. We don't say that word.
Mhm,
Okay. However you are feeling is how you're feeling. If you are stuck in that period of complicated grief where it's been 10 and 20 years and things are, still exactly the same, be gentle with yourself,
mhm.
but go get help.
Yeah. Yeah. Get help, get the support. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Connected to a faith unit, a community, get connected with the faith community. I know
Yep.
one of the challenges that going back to the church, um,
Mm-hmm.
people struggle with they were in the church for the funeral, and now
Yes.
how do I get back to that? So can you just share some tips on? I mean, look, in my case, I didn't have a choice, but
Right.
I didn't know.
I will say, it was very hard for me because my mom died on a Saturday morning, and Sunday morning we were at church with my grandmother. And that was very difficult. I'm not
Mm,
gonna lie to you. Sometimes still to this day, I don't like going to the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You accept that part of yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
baby steps. So you kind of, you give yourself that exposure. Today I'm going to make the decision to go to the church. It all starts with a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that discipline, because if you have the choice, you're not going to do it. But
Yeah.
because you want things to get back to normal, you are going to make an intentional decision to do something. Maybe this week you can only pull on Hall Brown Road. You might not be able to walk across, to the church. That's okay. Next
Mm-hmm.
week, maybe try to go a little bit further. I'm going to come into the narthex. All right, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's the best I got today. Also, don't be afraid to switch things up. We all like our little assigned seats in the church. We do. We love our little assigned seats.
Yeah.
It's okay to move and sit somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I recommend that in the beginning. Maybe just to get in the building, sit somewhere else.
Yeah. You might need to sit in the back row.
Yeah,
You know, or you might
I've
need to
done that
stand.
as well. Yep.
Yeah. And for you it was definitely challenging because your mom was on the choir.
Yeah,
So
so that
no
seat,
matter
I knew,
where
yeah,
you
no matter
sat.
where I sat, exactly. I knew who was not there on the end of the first row.
Yeah.
But when you're there, you
Mm-hmm.
just honor that it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
You honor that it's different. You cry. There were some services where I just cried the whole service.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
That's
know what.
all that's all I had, but I was in the building.
Yeah.
I was in the building.
I
But yeah.
I did that. I know the first communions. Like the funeral was in March 10th, no, March 12th, somewhere in the neighborhood. So the first communion Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was together enough, and
Yep. Nope.
that didn't do
Yeah.
it. We got a couple more questions. We
Okay.
definitely get in. It says, what can you do if you find what can you do if you find it difficult opening up to the therapist?
So a good therapist is like a good pair of shoes. Sometimes you have to break them in. So if you go to the first session and you're like, I'm not really feeling this, give it 3 sessions before you make a decision on whether or not this
Hmm.
therapist is for you.
Hmm.
And don't let a less than ideal therapist turn you off to the idea of therapy.
Good
Try them
point.
out. They are human too, so you have to have a good connection. But also keep an open mind. Sometimes, we want somebody that's going to look like us, that's going to have our experience. Maybe your therapist is going to be a white male. Who knows? You know what
Hmm.
I mean? So be open minded and be honest. A lot of people say, okay, I want therapy. But then when, your therapist hits a hot spot, you want to run from it and you say, well, I'm good. Therapy's not for me. So kind of leaning into the discomfort. But don't
Okay.
quit. Give it 3 sessions before you decide it's not for you.
And that's a good point because with therapists they have personalities. You have personality, it just might not be a
Might
mix.
not fit. Yep.
You just need to try someone else.
Try somebody else.
Yeah, doesn't give up. The other question is this again is dealing with grieving with a small child, and the question is, should you let them see you constantly crying? Those are the words: constantly crying and unhappy.
So I think it depends on constantly crying is kind of, I'm a little bit, what does that look like? Is that
Yeah.
24/7 weeping? That might not be healthy for the child.
Hmm.
But, you know, intermittent, like, okay, I'm crying today for a moment. Maybe I'm crying 2 days from now for a moment. Like that could also be constant crying. So it kind of depends on what your definition of constant is. If you are in the I'm crying 24/7 and I can't function, pull in a support person. That's when you need to rely on your village because that could be damaging for your child to kind of see that often. But periods of emotion, no, please share them, experience them with your child so that they're not on the outside looking in, wondering, like, what is happening? Why is my mom crying? But engaging them in conversation about how you're feeling. Because then you're also teaching them to identify their own feelings, which
Hmm.
is a tool that a lot of us don't have, which is why we say, I'm feeling some kind of way.
Yeah, yeah. Someone has commented and said, I think it's Kelly Francis on. She said, "I think like values would be important. We faith people need a Christian therapist," and I think that's something that is something to consider. That if you
And
go,
that's a personal preference,
yes,
because
yes,
usually in the therapy room we aren't really supposed to have those types of things unless you are specifically a Christian therapist and you advertise as such. um So I mean, it's personal preference. Some people don't want the spiritual component. They want the practical reality of the situation. They don't want to hear it. So it's personal preference.
Right. The next question was, what can you expect when in therapy? And they mean conversation wise. How maybe should that conversation go with your therapist?
So they're all different because every therapist is different how they structure their sessions. But ultimately, therapy is your space. So your therapist is going to hear what you're saying, but also hear what you're not saying and help you to make sense of it. So think about it like a tangled, Christmas lights. When you come to therapy, I like analogies. That's the kind of therapist I
That's
am. I
good.
like
Yeah.
stories.
Mhm.
So when you
I
come to
can see it.
therapy, you might be sitting on the couch and your thoughts are like jumbled Christmas lights. You don't know which way is up, where to go, where to begin. Your
Mhm.
therapist is going to use their training, their experience. They're going to ask, hopefully open ended questions to help you make sense of what is happening to you. And so over
Mhm.
time, you will be able to unravel your Christmas lights so that things begin to make sense. They're going to hopefully equip you with coping skills, and the tools that you need to be successful in whatever your goals are. Um, it's just pretty much they're a compassionate mirror for
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
So you're the one doing the work though. So that's the thing. Your therapist is not just there to give you advice and tell you what to do. You have to put in the work.
Yes.
So, that's true therapy, not just, I'm venting and yeah.
And you're right. It's we have to do the work. If you're
Hmm.
going in, do the work, and you only get out of your therapy session what you put
What
in.
you put in. Absolutely. If you sit on the couch and you say, I have
Mhm.
nothing to talk about today,
Yeah.
guess what? You're not getting
Yeah.
anything out of it. And it's not the therapist's fault,
It's
you
not.
know?
You got to do the work. And I think often what I find with people, they just don't want to face the pain.
Mhm.
They they don't want to go through the pain to get to the healing.
Yep.
And
But you
you have
have
to
to.
heal, but you have to. And that's the same
It's
thing. The only
yeah,
way to get over grief, you have to go through,
absolutely.
you have to go through grief. And that's so important. Monique, you have been absolutely superb tonight. I'm
Thank you.
looking up, we've already hit up on the
I
hour.
know I could do this for hours. I'm
Well,
sorry.
because we definitely see that it's your passion and that,
Yes.
really God has anointed you for it. Isn't it amazing how he can take something so devastating that you've gone through
Yep.
and now he has turned this thing into really a ministry?
It is. It's crazy. It's been 5 years since I lost my mother, and at that day at the hospital, I just knew I was gonna
Hallelujah.
die. Yeah, like I
Mhm.
don't even think I was there half the time, truthfully. But knowing what I went through, those first couple of years of losing her, it does amaze me to see that God was able to use that. And that is why I'm just so passionate,
Yeah.
because I just want everybody to be able to heal. Like you feel like it's gonna take you out. I had times where I thought I
Oh
wanted to kill
yeah.
myself.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
didn't want to be here anymore. Like
Oh
my
yeah.
mother was my soulmate. So how am I going to live when a part of me is really gone?
Right.
But you do. You make the decision every single day when you get up that I'm
Mm,
going to do something today that my future self is going to thank me for. And
yeah.
every day is not going to look the same. Some days you are going to be at the top and you are so productive. And there are some days where literally putting your feet on the floor it feels impossible.
Right.
But, you can do it.
You
You
can
just
you
got to
can make
show up
it.
for yourself,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And just to say those, who are in the faith, um,
Hmm.
just to understand to anyone who may be listening or watching, your faith does not mean that you are ineligible to grieve.
Yep.
It does not mean that because you're grieving, you have lost faith, you don't trust God. It doesn't mean that at all. It just goes hand in hand. God gives us room, He gives us space that we can grieve and that we can go through that whole process. And when we talk about hope and when we talk about joy, joy doesn't mean I'm walking around with my smile on my face and I'm
Hmm.
always feeling happy go lucky. The joy is that although I'm hurting right now and although I know my loved one, I want my loved one to be here with me and it's okay to want that.
Hmm.
But my joy is that I know one day I'm going to see them. If they died in Christ, you're going to see them again. That's our hope and that's our joy. But what we're saying tonight is okay to feel the pain. It's okay to grieve because, as was said early, grief is the price that we pay to love. And when you've loved someone, it's okay to pay that price. And so we just hope that tonight that what Monique has shared has given you some tools, have given you some support and encouragement as we continue on into this holiday season. Reach out if you need to reach out to someone. You can reach out to a friend, reach out to your pastor, reach out to any of us that we can probably connect you. You could just reach out to Monique even just so that she can direct you into a place where you can go to get that help, because we want to help you to get through this holiday and just get the most out of it. My prayer for everyone here online who may be going through, my prayer for you is that the pain that you were expecting and you're experiencing will not be as severe when the Christmas day comes, that it will be better than you would imagine that it would be. We know it's going to be tough, but we're praying that it's going to be better. All right. So thank you everyone for coming online. Monique, thank you again.
Thank you.
You brought so much to this conversation, and we just truly, truly appreciate it. And I know without a doubt, you have helped so many people tonight. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Family and friends. And look, it's okay to still share this out because there may be others who on your friends list and anywhere else who might need to hear this tonight, and that can help them through this whole process. All right. Good night, Facebook family and friends, and those of you who are out on YouTube. Oh yeah, and you YouTube people, if you're on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe. Okay, like, subscribe, so we can get our numbers up. All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.